You feel sick over the holidays.
Are they all on?
You have a good Christmas and New Year?
You did. How about you?
Yeah.
Good. Don't have one
No,
here.
and that article, I couldn't see a date in there.
No. No, September. Okay, I'm ready.
Yep, let's go.
Okay, I'm going to call the Board of Directors meeting for January the 4th, 2024 for community transit. The Board of Directors meeting is conducted in hybrid format, both in person and remote, and is recorded and live stream. Rachel, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Frizzell.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Marine.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Mead.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Merrill.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Nearing.
Here.
Thank you. Labor Representative Norton.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson. Mayor Roberts.
I'm here remotely.
Thank you. Councilmember Schweddy.
Present.
Thank you. Chair, we have a quorum. For our board alternates, looks like we have Councilmember Payne in attendance as well as Councilmember Gallagher in the room. And that concludes roll.
Okay, thank you. Now it's time for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? You have 3 minutes at the podium. Did anyone sign up, Rachel? Okay. What about on remote? Is anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? I don't see anything or hear anything. Are you seeing more than I am? Okay, real good. Then we'll go on to the next item, which is the presentation of service awards. CEO Alton-Fritz.
Great, I'll go
That's
around to the podium. And
Okay, super.
Thanks, Chris. Well, good afternoon, board and assembled folks. We have 3 service awards to give out today and to recognize 3 employees for their long service. Let's start with Tina Guzinski. Tina, could you join me up here? How are you? Awesome. Tina is celebrating 20 years with community transit. She is a human resources assistant and she's that's what it says right there. Oh, original position. That's the original position. She started as a human resources assistant. She is now the manager of employee engagement, program manager. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. If there's any training you want to recommend for me I'd be happy to have that. Anyway, she's been really such a critical part of Cesar's team for so many years, and she has just absolute passion for supporting her fellow employees. She has a lot of fun hobbies. She enjoys her garden. She enjoys planning and seeing the results of her work as she puts seeds in the ground and sows the harvest. It's sort of metaphorical for working in employee engagement and employee development. Her home has been featured in the Everett Herald home section, not once, but twice, for her exterior and her garden. So she's got a true artistic flair that she brings to her community. But really what I wanted to focus on today is her passion for her fellow coworkers. There's a recent anecdote that exemplifies her commitment to her fellow CT employees. And it has to do with a new employee who I won't name, but who has been a coach operator trainee. And as you guys all know, we've been recruiting like crazy and being very successful, hiring and staffing up for our service growth this year. Well, this trainee was facing the need he thought to resign because he did not have housing and did not have a place to live in Snohomish County or in Pierce County, where he originally came from. And Tina recognized this situation And rather than accepting his resignation, she went to work with her colleagues and with Snohomish County and some array of nonprofit services, and helped this individual find temporary housing so that he could remain a coach operator trainee and work his way through our training program and become a full licensed coach operator. So that's just a small anecdote, but it's an example of how Tina goes above and beyond to help her fellow employees and to help community transit serve our community at large. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you for your service and recognize your 20 years. Congratulations. Anything you'd like to say? Okay. We're going to take a quick picture. Okay, next up. Come on up. You started as an assistant in kidding. This is what it says your current position is. No, we're going to work on that. Diane really is a force within the IT department. She supports Chaz Stearns, and but more than that, she's a real accomplished project manager and taskmaster, some might say, within the IT department. Her specialty, aside from helping herd the cats amongst the managers and trying to keep Chaz and before Chaz, Tim in line, is really developing and supporting the administration of the IT budget. As you know, the IT program has grown in complexity and sophistication over the years as our system has become more sophisticated, as our vehicles have become more rolling tech platforms. And she's been sort of the key within the IT department to tracking how we're doing on all those projects and all of our IT expenditures year over year. She's been recognized for that multiple times. Many years ago, right up until this last year. And so I want to congratulate you for all of your contributions. On a personal note, I want to observe during the transition following Tim's retirement and before Chaz arrived, while Mike was overseeing IT, Diane was an immense resource to me and to Mike to help maintain continuity in the IT group while we recruited Chaz. So thank you for that as well. Congratulations on 20 years. Our third employee is Chuck Hoops, who is not here today. Oh, all right.
Turn around. Oh, I'm out.
Oh.
You were demoting people.
He probably just got done driving it. We were just talking about you, Chuck. I'm glad you made it. Here's the board of directors. Here's your coworkers. We're here to recognize you for 30 years of service to community transit. Just a few words about Chuck. Chuck and I have not had the opportunity to meet and talk at length, but the information I was provided by his team is pretty phenomenal. It's hard to sum up 30 years of driving in a 5-minute chat, but what I can share with you is he has received multiple commendations over the course of his career here, I counted at a minimum 9 commendations over the course of his career. He received his 1 million mile award back in 2012, almost 12 years ago. And he has driven 23 years straight of safe driving over the course of his 30 total years. That's a remarkable accomplishment. It is so hard to be out there on the road, managing the vehicle, managing the people getting off and on, managing the vehicles around him, different conditions, different weather, day, night, snow, rain, sleet, bright sun, traffic. What our customers depend on us for is that consistency, that bus is always going to be there, that they can always get on it and get where they want to go, from where they are to where they want to go. Chuck exemplifies that. So congratulations on 30 years. Thank you for your service. No, I'm tired. Okay, Chuck is tired. So we got a little hardware for you. The work is never done. So thank you for that. Chris, here you go.
Okay, our next item is you anyway.
Oh, all right.
Yes, it's Chief Executive Officer's report.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So 2024, it's upon us. It's a very big year, very exciting year. We had a big year last year. We got an even bigger year this year, and we're getting kicked off in a really exciting way with all kinds of activities. I'll just report briefly on a few things. I know you're aware of most, some new information. We met again with our partners at King County Metro and Sound Transit last week during the break, as we continue to work on developing an operating plan for Link Light Rail this fall, serving the Linwood Transit Center. Our discussions are continuing to show some progress, and I'm encouraged about the direction we're going. I'm seeing a sincere commitment by all the partners to make sure we've got the best possible operating plan in place on day one, and that we've got some strategies in place to respond if the system does start to crowd or if we see a breakdown in resiliency. So more to report as we get further into the year, but as you've heard me report frequently in the past, the concerns that we've elevated, I think, are in the process of being addressed. So more to come on that. On the Everett Transit front, we, as you know, have been working with Everett and the city and Everett Transit on a consolidation study. We are going to have a meeting of the Joint Policy Council tomorrow on Friday, which we expect the members will give us the go-ahead to do a series of briefings of key stakeholders, including this board and the Everett City Council, on the draft service plan that could be the result if Everett decided to consolidate with us. So that would be at our next board meeting. It would be at the City Council on January 31st, just prior to our next board meeting on February 1st. And then we would follow that with a series of briefings to community groups, including both unions, both operating unions, all of our union representatives, EASC, SKIT, some other stakeholder groups around the county. I think the goal here is to report back to folks who've had an interest in this issue over the past year and a half on how the planning work has evolved and conceptually what a consolidated system could look like. I would expect the city then to deliberate on whether they want to continue the work or take a timeout or continue further public engagement. So we'll keep you posted as we learn more in that regard.
Council members Daughtry and Merrill and Mayor Marine have been very active in the Joint Policy Committee, as you know, and have been active in their advocacy for the board and the role this board plays governing the PTBA and making decisions about how we ultimately engage with our partner in expanding or not expanding the PTBA, as the case may be. So again, more to come on that. FTA, a lot going with Region 10. We hosted Susan Fletcher, the new FTA administrator for Region 10, the week before Christmas for a tour of Cascade and also of the Orange Line alignment. You'll recall that we received over $43 million in federal investment for the Orange Line. So she was eager to see how the project is going. She brought her team up here as well, and we had an opportunity to meet with her on site, hear from her a little bit about what her priorities are, and then take her out in the field to take a look at the project. We briefed her on our SWIFT expansion, all the active SWIFT projects we have underway, including the Gold Line and our expectation of preparing that project for potential federal funding partnership. We also briefed her on our network restructure and the zero emission program. So lots going on there. You all are aware that we are on the cusp of a short session, 60-day session starting next week. So I've had an opportunity to meet with a number of legislators prior to the session to check in with them and reaffirm for them our interest in maintaining our funding partnership with WashDOT and the cash flows for the SWIFT projects that they included in Move Ahead Washington. We like those the way they are, and so we're encouraging them to keep those the way they are. So more to come there, obviously, as the legislators get down to Olympia and start stirring the pot. We've got a first quarter Washington State Transit Association meeting toward the end of the month. So I'll be down in Olympia with my colleagues and have an opportunity to meet with some of our legislators again at that time. Next week, I'm going back to Washington, D.C. to meet briefly with FTA headquarters. We want to preview for them some potential grant activity that we're forecasting for this year and next, including our zero emission program. You'll recall in our work on that program, we talked about the federal funding component of it. So we're going to go back and start that conversation. We expect a notice of funding opportunity will come out later in the year. And so the advice we're getting is to get out to DC a little ahead of that, to have a conversation about how we might structure and strategize our grant approach. Likewise, with the Gold Line, we'll be letting them know where we are in the development of that project and forecasting an ask there as well. Let's see, moving right along. We are in the season of Orange Line. Speaking of that, you'll recall our target opening date is March 30th. We sent out some save the date emails to our federal delegation, state delegation, key stakeholders. So I hope everybody's got that on their calendar. We will be moving into a marketing campaign and planning a big kickoff event for the 30th. And you'll be able to see that activity start to take shape on our website, communitytransit.org/SwiftOrange for those keeping score at home. And we're very excited about that. I think, here we are, first week of January, and the next 2.5 months are going to go by very quickly. So exciting times ahead. Next week, speaking of that, we'll be opening the Hardison Road campus for our new service and operations building. The board has been invited to attend. Our employees have been invited to attend. We'll be holding our monthly all hands meeting after the ribbon cutting ceremony. So if you're able to make it, feel free to swing on by and stay for the all hands meeting. We're looking forward to dedicating our latest new facility and getting Roland and his team ensconced in their new home. And then, of course, the following week on the 18th will be the board composition and selection meeting. So Rachel has sent out invitations and reminders, and Al and Matt are ready to support those discussions here at Cascade at 3 p.m. on the 18th. I'll just finish briefly with a touch on our current hiring. The coach operator staffing level is currently at 385. You may recall from previous reports, our goal for our March service change is 381. So we are now ahead of forecast. Our goal for September, when we restructure the whole network, is 404. We currently have 68 candidates in the pipeline, either in various stages of application, hire, pre-hire, or trainees. So we're feeling pretty good about staffing for 2024. Obviously, we'll continue to play through on that. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Anyone have any questions for Rick? Yes.
No questions, but can I just RSVP for the board comp meeting? I can't remember if I, okay, great, thanks.
I wasn't sure what that was, but that's okay.
We just want to make sure everybody's RSVP'd for the board
Oh,
composition meeting if
for
they
the
haven't already.
Okay,
Yeah.
for our election meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe it was what was the meeting that's after opening next week?
That's the all hands meeting.
Now, is that going to be at the same facility?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yep. We're doing the ribbon cutting at 9 and
Oh, I thought it was 10.
10.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll be there at 9. There'll be coffee if you want to hang out for an hour. But we'll do the ribbon cutting at 10 and then our all hands meeting will be after that.
Okay, excellent. I will plan on doing that. Okay, next item is the committee reports. The first one is the executive committee. The executive committee met on December 21st. Councilmember Merrill, Mayor Roberts, and Mayor Marine and I attended. The CEO report was provided. The next committee meeting is scheduled for January the 18th at 11:30 a.m. So our next one is Finance, Performance, and Oversight.
Okay, the Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee met on Thursday, December 21st, 2023 in a Zoom format. Board members, Mayor Christine Purcell, Mayor John Naring, Councilmember Jared Mead, and I attended. In terms of consent items, the committee reviewed and recommended one item to the consent agenda. That is approval of the November 2023 monthly expenditures and payroll vouchers, which will be items 7E through I on the consent agenda. Action items, the committee reviewed and recommended 2 action items to the board's consideration. Number 1, interlocal agreement with Snohomish County Human Services. And number 2, interlocal agreement with Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. We had, in terms of reports, we had the Transit Security Officer Program update. Don Burr, Senior Director of Safety, Security, and Sustainability, provided an update for the Transit Security Officer Program. Second report was sales tax report for November 2023 unaudited. In November 2023, Community Transit collected approximately $17.7 million in sales tax revenue, approximately $1.1 million less than budgeted. A copy of this report is in your packet. And then thirdly, the diesel fuel update and report for November 2023. The average cost year to date through November 2023 was $3.68 per gallon, while the average cost per gallon budgeted for 2023 was $4.25. This resulted in a favorable variance of 57 cents per gallon year to date through November. The next Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m. Thursday, January 18th, 2024 via Zoom. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question? On the consent item, there were 2 awards that were made. Were those not finance? Were they on yours?
Items B, C, and D, or came from the strategic
Oh,
alignment.
okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, our next one is a strategic alignment and capital development.
Jen, I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Mayor Roberts, you just mentioned that the Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee would be on Zoom, but we have a 3 o'clock meeting here in person. Could I make a suggestion that we move that to an in-person meeting?
It would be fine with me. I was going to make note of that. I'm glad you caught it. I plan to bring my computer to the community transit just in case it was going to be on Zoom, but I think that's a good idea. Is that all right if we do that? If we're just going to be there anyway?
Chair, we are planning to have a hybrid meeting for those that need to be in person and if there's that need to be remote still.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like it's covered. So thanks, Rachel.
Okay, go ahead.
Ready?
Tom.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee meeting was held over Zoom on December 20th, 2 p.m. Meeting was attended by Councilmember Daughtry, Mayor Marine, Labor Rep Norton, and Councilmember Peterson and myself. The committee awarded and forwarded 3 consent items to today's agenda, as previously noted, items B through D. First was award RFQ 2023-112 brand specific bus destination signs. 2 is award RFP 2023-91 community engagement support. And item 3, award ITB 2023-97 transit shelters and spare parts. The next meeting for the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee is scheduled for Wednesday, January 17th at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions on that? That was interesting. I appreciated hearing about all of the shelters and things that were getting updated and fixed and everything. That was great. Okay, our next item is a presentation on our security program update, and Roland Behe, you are up. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to do that. I did have that down here. That's why I caught the other thing.
Madam Chair, I would approve, move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thanks. Okay, Roland, sorry about that.
All right, I'm, let's see, good. I'm also just up here, both Scott and I have been before you before, but just also introducing Scott Eastman, our Senior Program Manager in Security Services. And Scott and I will be bringing a presentation update, a combination of an information item, providing an update on our Transit Security Officer program, and then we'll also be tag teaming on framing the 2 action items that are before the board today on both the social worker program and also the transit police unit contract with both with Snohomish County. So let's see if we're so I'm going to start before Scott gets into the transit security officer program update. I just wanted to revisit this diagram with the board. You may recall that we provided a presentation on the security program earlier in 2023 as we were just beginning to develop the transit security officer program. And we're going to use this both as a reminder of how community transit is structuring our efforts to provide for security in a comprehensive way in the field throughout our system, and also to frame the sequence of information we're going to present today. And so just as a reminder on how this works, the diagram really identifies the different roles or lanes of activity, if you will, for people that are involved in both operating the system, using the system, and then also administering security and safety out there on the system every day. And you can see that it begins at the top with our customers and members of the community, which are really in the broadest sense, the eyes and ears that often will alert us to issues on the system. And it works down through the various roles in terms of our frontline employees, our coach operators, both directly operator and also contracted staff, service ambassadors who are out particularly on the SWIFT service, both providing information to customers and also checking fares. The new role of social worker, which we piloted in the last year and then are going to be asking for action on today. And Scott will share more about that in a few moments. Our field supervision, which provides for control of the system and supporting our operators in the field on a daily basis. And then finally, as we move down through this pyramid, we're talking about with really each layer an increasing level of responsibility and capability in supporting security. And those final 2 layers, transit security officers, which again is the new layer, which Scott's going to share a lot more information about in terms of updating on how that's going. And then finally, the transit police unit, which really is that highest level of capability with fully commissioned officers in the field. So just a reminder about how it's working. our goal in operating in this way and in coordinating the activities is that all of these roles work together. We like to use an analogy internally around music. We call this a symphony, or in some cases a smaller group, but it's everybody's working off the same sheet of music in terms of the same information and reporting that we're all acting on. As we manage these layers, we're working to coordinate them in an organized way so that they're applied where the need is throughout the system. And so we like to present, when we talk about any one layer, we like to talk about that whole and how it relates to the other roles or lanes of responsibility that are out there. So it'll be a useful device. We'll kind of come back to this a couple of different times as we work through the presentation today. So I'm going to hand it over to Scott to talk about the transit security officers.
Thank you. Appreciate the time there we go. Good. To update you on our transit security officer program. Great picture of 11 of our good looking TSOs. There's 3 of them here in the back tonight. We have done a lot of work with on our staffing, on our recruiting efforts, our interviewing and hiring. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. We've been able to establish our standards and operations procedure manual. We worked with a vendor to create not only our use of force policy, but also a use of force program. And I'm happy to say we have our second use of force class coming up later this month. We have a very comprehensive training program that really focuses on the ability to use verbal skills to avoid confrontation and de-escalate. Recognizing people that may be in crisis and how to effectively interact with them. We have worked really hard on our branding, and I think the picture here and those 3 good-looking guys in the back are examples of that. Really want to portray a professional appearance, but also be very visible, and you'll see that also with our vehicles if you see those driving around. We've been very intentional about our deployment strategies. We want to be able to use the resources that we have in the most effective way, and we'll be talking about that here just a little bit. And we are currently in negotiations with ATU to create a collective bargaining agreement for our TSOs. So lots of work going on. So where we're at today, we probably, I will admit, are not where I would have liked to have been at this stage, but not for lack of effort. But we are currently at 15. We've had a couple of people that didn't make probation, and we had one person that left for another opportunity. But I'm happy to say we're at 15 today. We have number 16 starting on Monday, and we continue to interview. And we have interviewed about 60 applicants out of over 500 applications. And that is just an example of what a high standard and high expectations for our TSOs. So we're taking the time to get the right people. Oops, went the wrong way. So our training program is also very comprehensive. They spend about 4 weeks in the classroom doing all sorts of things. That's where we get all of our classroom sessions, all of our federal, our FEMA training, all of our required training for community transit. And then once they have their uniform and they're done with their classroom period, they go out in the field and where they're actually evaluated on actually doing the job. So they're more practical, hands-on. Ed, if he'll actually wave his hand, he may not, is finishing his last week of his field training. So he'll be all done after this week. So we're happy to have him join. And then they're deployed out in the field, assigned to a regular shift, and assigned their general responsibilities. Did it again. There we go. So we, as you know, are budgeted for 18 TSOs. We are proud to say that we're covering 7 days a week from 5 a.m. to midnight. Day shift is from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then our swing shift works from 2 p.m. to midnight. We have intentionally put more TSOs in the evening hours where we're having more of our problems. Things still happen during the daytime. But when we looked at our resources, that was the where we needed to put our emphasis. I will get it, I promise. So when I've kind of alluded to a few things as far as how we're deploying our TSOs. So we're deploying them to address the highest frequency of our rules of conduct violations. So I talked about hours of the day. So we know most of those are happening during the evening. So that's where we put most of our TSOs. We're also focusing on the areas where we're having higher rates of rules of conduct violations with an emphasis on drug use and possession on coaches. And then last but not least, we have specific strategies that which is sort of a force multiplier where we have, if with the number of TSOs, we want to have as much of a presence as possible. So we're using strategies to get on as many coaches as possible to have the most presence. We want it to look like there are hundreds of us with only 18. So we have a group of hardworking TSOs. We just took a snapshot, just a 3-month snapshot, just to look at what our activity is looking like. So when we talk about self-initiated calls for service, those are where they're coming up on a stop or they're on a coach and they observe something that wasn't reported to them. And then we have our dispatch calls of service, and those are typically something that's being reported by a coach operator, and it goes through dispatch and is then dispatched over the radio. And so we've had almost 1,500 self-initiated calls for service, about 300 dispatch calls for service, and then almost 5,000 contacts just in a single 3-month period. And these field contacts are critical. These are not all rules of conduct violations. In fact, the vast majority of them are not people that are doing anything wrong, because part of our mission is to interact with our customers. And so even if somebody's improperly using a stop, for example, we're having a conversation with them. It doesn't need to be all about enforcement, because we want to solve the problem rather than just kick the problem down the road. Now, when we took the statistics that we got over a similar 3-month period for the transit police unit, you can see that that the TSOs, despite the fact that there are fewer of them and we don't have as sophisticated as a record keeping process as they do, that we're keeping up, right? If we think about that triangle again, that space that Roland was talking about with the TSOs was a gap. And I really feel like that the TSOs have been able to fill that gap, because a lot of those calls that you see in blue do not have a criminal nexus that would have justified using transit police to deal with. And so the TSOs are able to address a whole range of issues that maybe weren't previously being dealt with. One of our big goals is to open our security operations center. And so there's a picture of it. We plan to do that once we are at 18 fully trained TSOs. That's going to allow us to give that real-time deployment of TSOs in transit police. We're going to be able to actually answer our security phone number, answer in real time our security info email address. We're working with communications on having our own version of text to 911. So we would have numbers that somebody could text in an issue that would go into the SOC. And then we will have calls that will inevitably be transferred from the call center and other sources. And so we'll be able to get those in real time and deploy our TSOs. Just wanted to give you some successes. There's nothing like being able to kind of toot your own horn a little bit, but just some things that some examples of some good work that happened. So this is one that was on the Nextdoor app, and the person wrote, "This is awesome. Finally, they have security following and riding on the bus. There were 2 huge guys in uniform on the bus. Hopefully this stops the zombies from smoking on the bus." Now, we don't normally have vehicles following buses. This was actually a training situation where there was a couple people training on the bus and somebody following. But it's just an example of the value and the appreciation of that presence. Another one you may have heard about, there was a stabbing that happened on one of our coaches. The TSOs were able to locate that stabbing suspect and kept that person under observation. And while they were waiting for law enforcement to arrive, they observed him putting a backpack into a trash bin. When they did a search warrant on that backpack, they found the knife. So if the TSOs hadn't been paying attention to what was going on, being observant, and then acting appropriately, we may have not only missed the guy because he would have potentially run away, but we may not have been able to know where the weapon involved was. So it was great work on their part. This is actually a picture that came to us from one of our field supervisors, just expressing appreciation for TSOs moving folks that were camping on one of our Swift stations. And then last but not least, oh no, I got two more actually. This is one that was on our Facebook page from a coach operator. And you can read it there. It says supervisors are riding the line, popping on and off anywhere. Transit security are doing sweeps and sitting in problem areas. Fare ambassadors are riding at any time and will board anywhere and check proof of payment. Best agency ever. This dedication and teamwork is definitely paying off. And this is probably the best feedback that we ever get. And we would hope to get more of this because we're not looking to do all of this by ourselves. We really look at, when we look at supervisors, coach operators, service ambassadors, and TSOs, we're all working together. We all have a part in making our coaches and our facilities safer. So this is a great comment. And then more recently, TSOs were advised of a domestic violence suspect that the incident was fairly far down the road, but they put out a description, and we were able to locate them at our Casino Road stop. And at that time, they were actually talking to the guy, and were able to kind of engage him until law enforcement arrived. So just a few examples. So where are we going from here? We continue to use the lessons that we're learning to make program adjustments. And we get a lot of data and a lot of feedback to make those changes. Again, talked about opening our security operations center. So that's an important goal for us. And then we will at some point review a staffing analysis findings to make a determination as far as what our future staffing levels should be. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So Scott, I really like all the positive stuff, but let's talk about the negative.
Okay.
Has there been any pushback about having a TSO operation out there from anybody? I'm not talking just customers. I'm talking about legislative, anything.
No, we've gotten great support. We get great support from our elected officials and our staff. It's a different dynamic out in the field. And so I think there's a little bit of an adjustment period with our peers, but that's going well. And we continue to communicate and work through concerns and questions and things like that.
Thank you.
And the feedback from the public is and our probably, again, one of the most important ones I think are the coach operators, because we're getting comments that they feel safer, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. I'm a really big fan of this program. So if you could, I think you kind of described it. I just want to make sure I understand. So it sounds like the role they'll start, for instance, if you just take one transit security officer and they're on a 10-hour shift, or I don't know what, do they just have do they have a plan of what routes they're going to ride that day? Obviously they could get taken off their plan or how does that work? I'm assuming there's a plan going into the shift.
There is. So we shied away from riding, say, a bus from beginning to terminus, because we're only affecting
one bus.
coach.
Yeah.
So we use, one of the things we do is what we call coach checks. So take Casino Road, not if there's any issues there, but we'll have two TSOs, the doors open, they get on, they check with the coach operator, they check the back of the bus. If there's no issues, 10 seconds, they get off. Didn't slow the bus down. If there's an issue, they can decide whether to hold the bus and deal with the issue, or have that person removed and then address it. And so by doing that, we're able to hit
a number of coaches.
We could even hit, our goal is always to hit all 12 coaches that are running on the BRT on say Blue, for example.
Oh, okay. So it's mainly hop on, hop off.
That's one of the things that we'll
Okay.
do. And another one was we may park the car at Everett Station and we'll do what we call leapfrogging. So we'll ride for a couple of stops,
There
get
you
off,
go.
get on another one, ride for a couple of stops
Excellent.
and kind of ride that back and then back to their car.
Yeah, I think both those are valuable. I mean, I like that. I agree. You don't want to stay on the same coach for too long, but I think, yeah, a couple of stops I think that's where you get some of those comments of, yeah, I mean, I just think outside of the investments being made in infrastructure, which clearly you can't run an agency like this without all the infrastructure improvements, that's paramount. But outside of that, I can't think of anything more important for the future of mass transit than this, just with the way the world's going. I mean, I know, some of the times when I ride light rail down to Seattle or whatever, it's the same type of thing. I think the main concern right now of people that are riding this type of thing is, am I safe on it? And so the more safe we make you feel, the more likely you are to continue riding it, particularly people that have options. And so, yeah, great job. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I also, very big fan of this, and just the presence alone will stop things from happening that maybe would have happened if they weren't there, just being on the bus. So that's one good part, but what ability do they have to insert themselves? Because I think a number of us probably remember, I think it was on King County Metro down in one of the bus tunnels in Seattle, and there was a young girl at 16 being beat up. And there was security standing right there and they couldn't engage. I think that frustrated everybody. I was on Sound Trans at the time and it's like, would that happen to us? Because there's an expectation that they say security, I feel safer, but am I, right? So to what degree can they engage?
So our use of force policy allows them to use force in defense of themselves or others. And so they carry pepper foam and handcuffs, but handcuffs as a de-escalation tool.
But not foam handcuffs.
No.
Okay.
No. And so it's hard to say in that situation what their actions would have been, because they're having to also, we don't want to sacrifice their safety.
Right.
So I think it would be a judgment call in the moment, but they're authorized under our policy to do that. But we just want them to be safe about it. And sometimes the best thing you can do is get on the radio and get the law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that'd be the first thing, right?
Yeah.
But they said, well, they can call the cops. Well, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can be just
Right,
a bystander on the bus and call the cops,
Yeah.
but I'm going to think twice about inserting myself.
Yeah.
Sure. They have better training and weapons and, the foam, that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, so they could intervene in a situation like that.
perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions?
If I could add one thing to Scott's response to Councilmember Daughtry's question, because it's an important question. It's not all, roses and bunny rabbits out there. One of the most important things they've done in structuring the program and structuring the training is establish role definition vis-a-vis the transit police unit. And when Scott talks about the partners, he's referring to our partner law enforcement agencies from the city police forces. So that was a real big question going in, is how is this unit going to fit with the sworn officers from the various jurisdictions? Because there are concerns about making sure everybody knows what everybody else is responsible for, able to do, who's going to respond, how's that response going to happen. So I think, we're in the first half year of trialing this in the field. And the results so far are very encouraging. But it's really that role definition that is so key to the success of the program. So I think they've done a great job of establishing that and structuring the program to fit as a complement to law enforcement. The proof will be in the telling as we go forward. That's an area that we're watching most closely.
So that's great news. But have we talked to all of the police departments in all of our jurisdictions?
Yes, so before we even hired or put our first person in the field, I went to the county Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs and did a presentation on this and let them know about our plan. And so we haven't had a lot of dialogue, but they're certainly aware of the program and kind of we just starting that communication line.
Okay, thank you. just to be clear, I'm really happy with this program also. I mean, sometimes I like to be a devil's advocate, but no, it's a wonderful program. Took us a while to do it, but you know, we had, every one of us wanted to make this happen. So and that's why it happened. So and you guys are doing a great job. So just thank you.
Did you have something?
Yes, I did. Everything everybody said about the program, I agree with, so I don't have much to add on that. It's a wonderful program and I'm glad to see we're doing it. What are some of the key metrics that you're watching over time that will help us know how well this is doing and where our gaps are? What are some important ones?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll be honest, we're working on processes to be able to collect the data to establish some meaningful metrics. So right now it's a bit old school and using spreadsheets. But we're hoping we're looking at options for technology that will allow us to collect that, especially when the SOC's open. But we would be looking for, we would want to track the types of rules of conduct violations we're having and see whether we're having an effect on reducing those. We want to see how many incidents, for example, maybe where are coming from the outside and how many of the TSOs are observing firsthand that they're finding that we wouldn't have known about had they not been observed it. So, I mean, we want to judge its effectiveness, but there's also that performance management piece, making sure that we're getting what we're paying for as far as their time and effort.
Thank you.
If I could add to that as well, we'll also, we regularly survey our customers and we ask them how they feel about their customer experience. Do they feel safe? Do they feel secure? So we look at those metrics as well. So we'd be looking for trends in that area. And of course, ridership. If people are feeling safer and they feel safe enough to ride, ridership in theory should come up. So we'll be looking for that as well.
Go ahead.
Just a question. I know we're going to discuss a contract that we have with Snohomish County. Are other police agencies involved with the process? So I'm thinking as a bus, if something happens in Linwood, does that call go to Snohomish County or does it go to Linwood PD?
So it depends on the type of call. If it's a routine call, then it would likely just go to the TSOs and the transit police unit.
Okay.
But our procedure is that if it's a priority call, a person with a weapon or something like that, that they not only will transportation dispatch call 911, but the SOC, if they got that information, would call 911 first. Our goal at that point is to get the closest law enforcement officer on scene, regardless of jurisdiction, and then transit police would show up and they would work out who would complete the investigation.
Okay, just so there's not a lag time while we're waiting for Snohomish County to show.
I don't know. The nice thing is our TSOs are on the same frequency with the transit police unit. So we're able to reach them without having to go through 911 and be queued, at that level.
Terrific. I'm excited about this program. I know a number of people who have expressed concerns, especially with things that have gone on in the past. And
Mayor, your mic is off.
Well, we don't want that happening. I just wanted to let you know of the people that I've talked to that have expressed delight that we're doing something. Even though they may not have seen it yet, they have seen it in the news. So continue to push out the good news to our media channels so that people know that this is happening and that we're not sitting on our haunches waiting for somebody else to do something, but that we're being active about it. So thank you to the men and women in the back of the room. Thank you for signing on to this new job.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else have a question? I've got a quick one. I know where most of the issues are. We all do. And that's where they're concentrated. But with all the rise in the fentanyl deaths and all of the drugs, are we seeing any more calls from northern Snohomish County out in whether it's Snohomish or Index or Arlington or Darrington or what? Are we getting any more calls because of the drug issues
Yeah,
from there?
I'd have to get back with you
Okay.
on that. I don't have that information right here.
Yeah, I guess I can just share, in terms of monitoring the daily reports we get coming in from transportation supervision, which is how those incident reports come into our databases. I think we are, as you said, we're deploying the resource where the bulk of the problem exists,
Right.
which is more central to the system. But I will say, I think we do see reports from other parts of the system on I would call it a regular basis. It's not the chronic issue that it is in the center of the system.
Yeah, and I know with the transit center there in Arlington, most of the time, what I'm hearing is that they call our police department because they always have someone, up there. And most of the time, yes, but that's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I would just say that's part of what we're working on is as Rick shared, we've essentially been piloting this for about 6 months in terms of having a significant number of TSOs out in the field and getting an understanding of what that capability looks like. Further experience will then inform what are the next steps for the program and how will it scale. So.
yeah. Thank you, guys. That was terrific. And
You made me think of another question. Speaking of fentanyl, are they traveling in pairs? Are they typically by themselves? And also, do they carry Narcan?
Oh, great. Yes, first they do carry Narcan and we use more of it than I thought we would. We had our TSOs save a life, not just recently, where they administered multiple.
Yeah, I was gonna say, usually it's taking more than one now.
And then they did chest compressions until the medics arrived. So we've had, I think we're on our second or third case of it. And the other question.
The other
I
one,
went straight
are
to
they
Narcan.
going out in pairs?
They
for
are. So,
safety?
well, so we're not always able to do that. If there's 5 working, somebody's gonna, probably be in a car by themselves, but we do change their responsibilities that day. So a person in a car by themselves certainly could.
They would be like in Mukilteo, somewhere safe, probably.
They could certainly get out of their car and address an issue, but they're more likely to focus on their being in the car and being a physical presence that way.
No, thank you.
May I?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I just thought I'd pass this story on as the years have gone by, and began driving a bus back in the 60s when I came home from the service. And we in the area of New Jersey that I was working had a lot of the commuter routes that went either from Hackensack to Newark, and then most of the commuter routes went either over the George Washington Bridge or through the Lincoln Tunnel. And in those days, we had everybody seemed to get on and pay, and if they didn't, you'd say, well, get me tomorrow, and you'd punch a ticket up from the National Cash Register and all. And it was somewhat complicated because we had so many routes, and each route had a different areas that you would pay different amounts, okay? But with the school children, they all got on, they had their little script tickets and they'd hand it to you. And if they didn't, you'd say, what's your name? And they'd tell you and say, tomorrow, don't forget that other ticket. No. And if they didn't, they didn't, But the commuters all paid, and they paid with cash. And for instance, going from Hackensack over to George Washington Bridge would be around 25, 30 cents. So the ones that never had the right change, you'd break the dollar bills, but some people would get on, and it would seem like every morning the same individual would have a $5 bill. And so you'd say, I get starting change, but you have to come in with close to the exact fare if you wouldn't mind. And when they didn't, you had these little register that you got the coins out of. And when they gave you $1 and the fare was 30, you'd get 2 dimes and 2 coins, give them the change. And so we'd load it up. And when they give you the 5, we'd give them all the change in dimes and nickels and quarters. And they got the message real quick. We didn't have many to say what operators are going through today. We had alcohol, but there wasn't the drugs. The job is basically the same as driving a bus.
but it's so much different today. And this gentleman tonight that came and was awarded the 30 years of safe driving, that's wonderful. It's amazing. I was also a recipient of awards just like he got for safe driving. But the one story I just have to pass on quickly, and I know everybody wants to get going. But at night, if you were driving a night route, if you had a sleeper, we call them sleepers, they'd get on and you go, oh, there's one coming, you know, and they go mostly to the back of the bus and they go to sleep. And so when you approached near the end of the route, either coming back to what we called the barn was the garage, and you try to wake them up, then you go back and yell, yo, you know, all that kind of stuff, but you didn't touch them. You know, most of these guys could jump up and start swinging, and I could never run real fast. So I'd yell, and when you got close to the garage, you give it one more shot. And if they didn't get up, okay, fine. And you pull the bus in, and I swear to God, just thinking about it, we had 24 hours of mechanics on duty. And the ones at night primarily were there to clean the buses and sweep them out and wash them and stuff. And when you pulled in the bus, they'd come over. And for instance, Lance, how's everything? Fine. Mechanically, great. Interior, you got a sleeper or not? Yeah, we got one sleeper. Have you tried? Oh my God, I've tried. Where is he? In the back. And he'd yell out to the guys, we have an interior wash. And so help me God, if it was a General Motors coach where those windows slid back and forth, other coaches had the windows come down. And they'd get on the bus and they'd open all the windows. And then they pull that bus right into the wash rack. And you would hear, before I could even get and turn in my money and my tickets and everything, you'd hear the screaming from the vehicle maintenance department when the people who were sleeping woke up. And they really enjoyed it, the mechanics. You had to be there. I mean, it was one of those where I don't know if he really deserved that, but I gave him every opportunity to get up and get off, and they would be soaking wet. And that's my story for tonight. But I thank you very much for what you are doing and what the drivers are going through these days and the help that's being assisted to them. Thank you so much.
Yes, any more questions? Okay, our next is the action items, and prior to them getting started, I have a statement to read. Legal counsel advises that the board members that also serve as Snohomish County council members not participate in the discussion or vote of this item, given it could be considered a conflict of interest or appearance of unfairness. So Scott Eastman and Roland Behe will be doing action item A and B, which is the approval of interlocal agreement with Snohomish County Human Services and the interlocal agreement with Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. Gentlemen.
All right, I'll be taking this one. So in your packet, you had your memo, but also an attachment that had some data over, I think it was from February through October of last year, just to give you an idea of some of the work that our social worker has done in that amount of time. Here's that inverted diagram again, and now we see where the social worker fits into that multi-layered approach. So in September of 2022, the Security Enhancement Strategic Plan was passed, and one of the strategies was an embedded social worker program to support users of our system who might need more assistance in connecting to services to address issues with substance abuse, mental health, and housing challenges. In November of 2022, the board authorized the CEO to negotiate and execute an amendment to the existing transit police contract, and that agreement was signed. So our social worker, Holly Shelton, started on January 17th, 2023. So in the last 10 months, Holly's been successful in providing alternative responses to individuals with social service needs within and or directly impacting community transit operations. Holly focuses on the most vulnerable individuals to provide them with needed resources that will improve their quality of life due to homelessness, mental illness, substance use disorders, and or other social service needs. As the data shows, Holly has been successful at making hundreds of contacts to begin the process of building relationships with clients to help connect them to services, as well as some successes. Just as a couple of examples, there was a pregnant female client using fentanyl that was contacted multiple times by Holly, but was hesitant to accept services. Eventually, the client was taken to the diversion center. There were some complications with withdrawal and her pregnancy, but the client did give birth and is expected to complete her treatment early this month. In addition, there was a male client that was contacted and asked about housing. The client reached out to Holly the next week, entered the diversion center 2 days later, and is currently engaged in intensive outdoor treatment and actually went into housing just last week. So funding has already been included in the 2024 approved budget, which includes salary, benefits, supplies, administrative oversight, leave coverage, and indirect costs for one social worker position. The program costs, both the FTE and the ancillary costs, will be negotiated annually for 2025 and 2026 budget cycles. So the board will be asked to authorize 2025 and 2026 costs as part of the normal annual budget review process. The indirect and ancillary costs may include costs associated with shelter, transportation, and other incidentals, as outlined in the ILA. So just go through these real briefly. The salary is based on a full-time social services worker for the scout team, then that person's benefits. Leave coverage to cover vacation and long-term illness, supplies and phone. It also includes clothing, safety equipment, and general supplies. Indirect and FTE expenses are those the portions of facility costs, program administration, IT, and HR. The flex funds are used to procure goods and services directly related to the needs of the individuals that can't be met through existing services or formal, informal community mechanisms. So examples might be food, clothing, medicine, bus passes, gas vouchers, even assistance with obtaining documents that they need. And then housing vouchers can include brief hotel stays, rental assistance, but it also can include applications fees, deposit assistance, and that sort of thing. And so that gets us to a not to exceed amount for 2024 of
$240,660. Just on that
Oh, yeah,
last
sorry,
one.
I'll go
So this is a new program starting up, and say she gets to about August and runs out of housing vouchers or flex funds, because this is not to exceed amount. How's that? Have we got a contingency, or is it she just done for the year for that?
So the county would absorb those additional costs.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good question. Brings up another question. So if the individual, the social worker, doesn't use the 45,000, are we paying a set amount? Is it use it or lose it, or?
We're paying a set amount, which is an average over the Scout program.
Okay.
And that those, other than salary, benefits, leave coverage, those types of fixed costs, the other costs are based on the prior fiscal year's expenses.
Okay. So if for instance, this year you used 28,000, then next year we would only pay 28,000 for the housing vouchers?
Yeah, I might just,
Go ahead.
Scott, maybe I'll just add just a little bit here in terms of how that cost model works. It is, in the aggregate over time, it is based on actual expenses. So we are, it's with this type of agreement, neither agency is either profiting or losing from it. And so as an example, the first year of the program was $325,000 in terms of that bottom line number. And so this year actually represents a reduction, and it's because expenses last year in the program weren't as high as they were initially anticipated to be. So we experience a savings this year. So there's a lag in how those expenses are applied, but it is based on the actual experience of the program. And the numbers that we see here are consistent with other partners that are participating in that social worker program. So it's consistently applied. Everybody really pays the same rate.
Okay, and this is a Snohomish County employee.
Correct.
And so the 27,000 is the overhead essentially for that employee, you know, for Snohomish County's administrative structure, that since they're reporting up through them, right? So if there's any kind of issue, CT's HR department doesn't deal with it or any of that. It all goes through Snohomish County. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the only thing we provide is really a workspace.
Yeah.
We don't address their IT needs or anything along those lines.
Great.
I'll also add that the county anticipates a 4 to 6% increase year to year. And so over the life of this agreement, we anticipate that it will cost approximately $750,000. For the life, yes, the life of the 3-year agreement. I am, yeah. I'm done.
Before you make the motion, I would just like to add that at the end of it, you put in the language within the parameters outlined in the presentation. There were parameters listed, and the way it's written, it's not listing those parameters. So
makes sense. Or not to exceed whatever that number was.
yeah,
So
well, there are some other things that were mentioned too.
you're suggesting a drafting change to the,
Huh?
you're suggesting a drafting change to
Yeah.
the
Right.
motion.
Right.
I would think that the contract actually has that in there.
Okay.
It does say contract.
That's fine.
All right. Ready for the motion?
Let me put it this way. It'll be understood that it'd be within the parameters
No,
of
I
the
just have a
presentation.
motion for you. I have a motion for you if you're ready.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready. So I move that the board authorize its CEO to execute a 3-year social worker contract with Snohomish County Human Services.
That's fine.
Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion,
Aye.
he has a question.
Oh, did you have a question?
Just one other kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Merrill had for the last one. If we could see some form of reporting back on a twice-a-year basis or something, that'd be great. Thanks. Sorry.
And I guess is in terms of discussion, so too, I'm supportive of this. Probably most cities do now, but we have a part-time contract that we pay for out of some of the funds that we receive back from the lawsuit. Yeah. So I think we contract with Compass Health. So this is, very good. And then the one, because it really makes a difference, right? There's a lot of people who just need the services and don't necessarily need the police to get involved as much. But I'm assuming because this is through the county, at times when sick leave or vacation, somebody else comes in.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. So we have somebody, it's a full time.
Right. Whenever we want Holly to take vacations and they cover it.
But most of the time it would be her, so we get consistency, so that's good.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, we
I
have
don't
a
know,
second.
I'm going
Yeah, we have a
to
second.
ask for a vote again, just to be sure. Did you have a question?
I did. This
Okay.
came up late, so I apologize for that, but I'm sure many of the people that the social worker comes in contact with moves around through the county. Is there any issues of sharing information between the social worker and maybe the embedded social workers in cities and working with the municipal and between the county sheriff's office and municipal police and with the medical environment? I know at one point there was some issue on the police getting I forget what jurisdiction it was in, would deliver somebody to the hospital but couldn't follow up with it because of HIPAA laws and things like that. Are there other barriers associated with this, or has all of that been worked out so that an issue, a social worker with Holly has submits somebody and they don't take advantage of the services and they pop up somewhere else, that they can begin keeping an eye out for this particular individual from various angles and jurisdictions.
Well, one of the advantages of contracting with the county is we have one social worker that's part of a larger scout team. And so I know that there's information sharing among that team, which serves multiple jurisdictions throughout the county. But I don't think I could answer the question about being able to share that information with law enforcement or other agencies.
Yeah, we can certainly find out the specific regulations are around it and get back to the board with that.
And Tom, are you referring to the fact that you had to have at least so many diversions before and there was nobody really tracking? So how do you know if it's a third one, that kind of thing?
Things like that, yes. There's a number of different issues in there that have kind of popped up around just knowing that. Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been read. Do we have a vote?
Aye.
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 All right.
Any opposed?
This is
Okay,
Jared.
motion
I'm gonna abstain.
passes. So now we move on to the sheriff's office. Roland, is that you?
That is me. Thank you. Yeah, so this is the second of our action items. And just to give a kind of an indication of what I'll be covering, we'll talk about the historic partnership that we have had with Snohomish County Sheriff for these services, briefly revisit this multi-layered approach that we've been tethering to this morning as we talk about these different strategies around security in the field. We'll just talk about why we contract for this and then just a brief review of the cost structure as we move forward. So just speaking to our partnership, just wanted to acknowledge that it's been 20 years now. The first contract that we had with Snohomish County on this was in 2004. So here we are in 2024. And so this will be multiple renewals that we've had on this agreement. It's been mutually productive for both parties throughout that time period. And, you know, the ability for transit to have a dedicated security force that has this level of capability and get the response time that comes with that's been really important. It's also allowed us to extend the capability of the sheriff resource throughout our service area in a way that wouldn't otherwise be possible. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And again, revisiting this, you know, we've talked about a couple of the different elements of this multi-layered approach, and it's a little bit under the Zoom thing on the screen there, but we're really talking about the point of that pyramid at this point. The transit police really have that highest level of capability. You know, we really try to address as many issues as we can with the other layers in the system, but there are some things that only this group can take care of. And so having them as an integrated part of our overall solution is really critical and really important. So in terms of why we contract for these services, as we said, you know, throughout, the whole security program is predicated on community transit, really prioritizing the safety and security of both our customers and also our employees. And, you know, as board member Norton just noted, you know, this is different than it was, say, 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. The community is in a different place, and it requires a heavier level of investment from public transit in order to be effective in this space. And so having this capability, some of the unique features of the agreement and that historic relationship with the county is it has allowed us to have essentially a guaranteed resource and assurance of timely response when we have a unique need on the system. Having them embedded within transit has also allowed a unique level of training for them in terms of how does public transit work? What are those unique operating characteristics? When they respond to a transit call, they know, you know, more than a regular peace officer in a local jurisdiction would know. They know exactly what they're getting into in terms of the back end of the operation. What can they expect when they get on that coach or when they intercept that event in the field? And so that has been really mutually beneficial. And as we said, it's also allowed, the Snohomish County Sheriff to extend their capabilities in terms of the force is bigger because community transit is participating in that and helping to provide that resource. So we continue to realize a lot of value from that. And it was, where we started building this program, and now we've been adding these other layers as well that both extend and complement that core transit police unit. So continues to be a really important element of our program. Just in terms of talking about the cost this time around, the cost of doing business is going up. And, one fundamental that I just want to say at the top of this is the way that these interlocal agreements work is that neither agency profits nor loses from it. So what we're looking for is an equitable expression of the expense and the payment of that. We are seeing a substantial increase over the previous period. So when we look at the costs for 2024, it's about a 38% increase over 2023. The bulk of that is in an increase in the cost of labor itself. So there's a new agreement between the county and the labor group in terms of providing that labor in the sheriff's unit. That is the bulk of the increase. We are also seeing some increases in costs for things like insurance, the legal expenses, the courts, et cetera. And so there's a broad category of risk mitigation fees. And this has been consistent across all of the program partnerships that the county has with the various jurisdictional partners with which they have agreements. But so really the combination of the approximately 20% increase in the labor expense and then the increase in these risk mitigation fees is responsible for the 38% increase in expense that we're looking at here. We have done a lot of due diligence on this. So just to say that we had really good collaboration between the county with their finance staff, with our finance staff. We had our legal review of the expenses, and we're satisfied after extensive review that it's fair, that we're getting value for the investment that we're making here, and that we're recommending moving forward with the contract for this next period. And so with that, we come to the recommendation, and I'm just going to pivot back here before I read that just to summarize the total here. First year at about $4.2 million, and then we have the established inflators for years 2 and 3 for 2025 and 2026, and the total that we're asking the board to approve today is that $13.2 million amount for the entire agreement. So the recommendation is the board of directors authorizes the chief executive officer to award the 3-year transit safety and protection services contract to the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, we have questions. Cam?
Yeah, I got one. You said that part of the mutual benefits of this is that we also help the sheriff's department have more sheriffs and more police in their department. So what I'm assuming that means is, let's say there was a large emergency management scenario someplace, let's say Boeing had a major fire or something like that, that they could pull the transit police in to help during that time.
Yes, I guess maybe the way I'll say it is, and Scott maybe can help to ensure that I'm stating this in the correct way here, but the deputies are dedicated to community transit and our needs and the calls that come in for transit response. It also does not prevent them from responding to another call in the area if they are the closest officer on hand. So it really is in the same way that, in some cases it might be a non-transit deputy that responds to a transit call if they happen to be the closest in the area. So there's mutual benefit to the community in terms of having an overall larger commissioned force out in the field.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Oh, John.
Thank you. Yeah, as I calculated it, I think I did it by 17.5. I guess there's a administrative support person as well. It's roughly the same cost as the embedded social work, around 40,000 a year per officer. Is that right?
I need to get the spreadsheet out.
Yeah,
to
sports.
confirm that,
But the point is, yeah, this includes equipment and administrative support, I'm assuming, just like that, and all of the different things.
Exactly. It's everything. And yeah, if you look at the memo, there's a little more detail in terms of the categories of cost that are included in this. But yeah, it's everything that is needed to support the group, and that includes equipment, it includes wages, all the services, et cetera.
And this gives us 24/7, well, support, or at least support every hour a coach is on. We have somebody available every hour a coach is out there. Is that how this works? Or
The way that I'll say that the way that they're deployed in the field provides complete coverage throughout the 7 days of the week.
okay,
And the coverage is very similar to what Scott shared earlier for our transit
CSO.
security officers.
Okay.
And there's intentional coordination between those two layers to ensure that they both have comprehensive coverage of pretty much the entire community transit service day throughout the week.
And do they, because kind of getting back to Mayor Marine's question of, you know, with the custody service officer, the one thing they are unable to provide is, you know, almost a guarantee of intervention in a dangerous situation or whatnot. So they would contact 911, and I'm assuming one of these officers would be sent out to deal with that type of situation. Is that kind of how they would work in conjunction? And then secondly, proactively, how do they handle their day? Do they do the same thing of checking in on certain coaches or certain stops throughout the day on a proactive basis if they're not responding to calls? Or
I'll take the first response. I'm going to let Scott fill in with some of the details. I'm going to say that community transit manages the resource through our safety, security, and sustainability department. And so there's a lot of coordination that goes on in terms of what's the data that we are receiving through operations in terms of where issues being reported. In the same way that the in-house security that Scott manages in terms of those transit security officers are focusing on that data, that we're analyzing that data and figuring out where are the problem areas that we need to focus on. That same information is also available for our transit police unit. And so everybody is really housed in the same part of the company in terms of how the operation is managed and run. They, of course, are, somewhat independent in terms of they report to the sheriff's office. But there is that same level of coordination between them. And so, yes, they have an operating plan. They're aware of how the system is operating and what reports are coming in terms of issues that are arising. There's a lot of communication in the moment between, for example, dispatch, who is running transportation out in the field. And they're always in very frequent communication with the transit police unit.
Yeah, I guess the only answer part of your question was, they do a variety of different things. They're probably not spending as much time on the coaches, but they respond to a lot more of the calls for service. And then, of course, they're out being very proactive. I think actually they probably find more things than they're sent to. But also to answer your other question, since we're on the same radio frequency with them, we have that quick instant communication with them. And they're really good about if they're further away than a local jurisdiction, they'll make that connection and get Arlington or Linwood or somebody to respond while they're responding. So we're not delaying our response because they may be on the other side of town.
okay. So when you say they find, is that just through going to stops, park and rides,
Yeah.
coaches, or?
Yeah, they're patrolling our service area. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was yielding for one question. You got like three. So I'm just curious, is it amendable? I know it's a 3-year contract, and the reason I ask is we got great TSO individuals out now, and it could be that their presence is doing such a great job that we're actually getting less calls, right? We've kind of cleaned up the corridor and things are going great, and we don't need as many officers. The positive side of things, right? Or on the other hand, because they're out there and they're seeing more, we have more calls needed and more officers. So it could go either way. I prefer the first, but so are we locked in for 3 years, or is it amendable along the way if we needed more or fewer officers?
I might offer just one additional piece of information that could help what's driving the question, but the contract cost that we have displayed here is for the full 18.5 FTEs. I will say that what we actually end up paying will be based on the FTEs that are supplied in the contract. So one is that we're, the actual resource level that's paid for is it's what's actually supplied by.
So it's adjustable if
By
we
the
need it.
unit. I would also say there's nothing that prevents the board from further amending this, over that 3-year period if that need was, if the need became obvious for
Yeah.
that.
All right, thank you.
There we go.
Or, yeah. I move that the Board of Directors authorize the Chief Executive Officer to award the 3-year Transit Safety and Protection Services contract to Snohomish County Sheriff's Office.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry, did someone? Okay.
This Councilmember Mead, I abstain.
Oh, said, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Oh, did you
Just
have something?
one quick comment. I wanted to just close the loop on action item 9A. Since the action of the board was to authorize me to execute the contract, I'll consult with counsel to make sure we've got the words right and that the path forward reflects the board's discussion.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, next item is the chair's report. The quarterly board workshop is canceled for January 18th. The board composition review and selection meeting is scheduled for January 18th at 3 p.m. and will be live streamed. At this meeting, the board composition will be determined for the next 4-year period, and the board of directors will be selected for a 2-year term. The next regular meeting is scheduled for February 1st at 3 p.m. At the end of the February meeting, board officers will be elected, which is the board chair, vice chair, and secretary. And board communication. So is everybody ready for this? Okay, Ken Daughtry.
I've got a few people have contacted me about the new services we're trying to provide, and Lake Stevens, there's a lot of excitement coming up. So I'm looking forward to what's going to happen.
Super. Mayor Fitzell?
Linwood is a happening place again this year. We've got the Orange Line coming on. We're excited for March 30th. It's circled and starred and fireworks on my calendar. We're really looking forward to having that connector go from west to east. And that's exciting. And in case you hadn't heard, Sound Transit is coming this year. In September, we don't have an exact date yet, but as soon as we do, we'll let you know. So a lot of transit things going on. We have other things happening with bringing on our new community justice center, but more exciting almost than that is a community recovery center where we are having space for people with fentanyl, substance abuse, mental health issues. So excited to have a lot going on in Linwood this year. Yeah, go dogs.
Mayor Marine.
I've got nothing.
Okay, Councilmember Mead.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Merrill.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, Labor Representative Norton.
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Peterson wasn't there. Mayor Roberts.
It's all good in Stanwood. That's all I have for that. Thank you.
I'm sitting here debating how I'm going to say this. And here's all I'm going to say. We have a new mayor. So please don't ask me how I'm doing. Okay, I saw Mike Gallagher, you're here. Did you have anything? Okay. Susan Payne, I think I saw her up there.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay. Was that everybody that? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Where were you? Oh, after Tom Merrill. Sorry about that. Go ahead. You didn't have anything?
No, thanks.
Okay. Okay, and there is no executive session. Any other business?
Not from staff.
Okay, then we are adjourned, people. Thank you for hanging around.
Thank you.